That one. His voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk, final and absolute. Every head in the hall turned toward me, confusion rippling through the gathered nobles like a stone thrown into still water. My lord, one of the high-born alphas, stepped forward, his jeweled collar glinting in the torchlight. Surely you mean the Thornwick daughter? The one in crimson. His gesture swept past me dismissively. This creature is from Silverpine. A token offering. Hardly suitable for. I said that one. Sievert's gaze never wavered from mine, pinning me in place with the weight of something I couldn't name. Not mere desire. Something older. Something that made the pendant against my skin burn as though the silver had remembered fire. The attendant's fingers released my shoulder so quickly I nearly stumbled forward. Whispers erupted around us, scandalized, shocked, hungry for gossip to carry back to their estates. Through the chaos, I heard fragments, the defective one. They say she's mad. Speaks to empty air like a lunatic. My legs refused to move. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was the insult, the deliberate slight from a village too poor and too desperate to offer anything of value. The council elders had promised me I would be overlooked, rejected, sent home after this humiliating parade so Silverpine could claim they'd tried. But the Alpha King was walking toward me now, his warriors parting the crowd like a prow cutting water. Each step echoed against stone, measured and deliberate, giving me time to run if I dared. I didn't. Couldn't. My mother's voice whispered in my memory, "The moon shows you what others cannot see." He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that I could smell him, cedarwood and steel and something wild that belonged to forests untamed by human hands. Up close, his face was younger than I'd expected, though his eyes held the weight of years no young man should carry. A scar ran from his temple to his jaw, pale against sun-darkened skin. "What's your name?" His voice carried no cruelty, only curiosity that felt somehow more dangerous. "Lucille." My voice emerged steadier than I felt. "Of Silverpine. Lucille of Silverpine." He repeated it as though tasting each syllable. Then, to my utter shock, he extended his hand, not to grab, not to command, but offering. "Come. We have much to discuss before dawn." Behind him, the court erupted into barely contained protest. A high-born alpha in silver and gold stepped forward, his face mottled with rage. "This is an outrage. My daughter was promised consideration. You cannot choose this broken thing over noble blood." Sievert turned his head slowly, and the temperature in the hall seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I am king. I can choose as I will." His attention returned to me, hand still extended. "The question is whether she will choose to come with me." Every eye in that hall burned into my back. Every perfumed omega radiated hatred and relief in equal measure. Every alpha watched to see if I would defy their king. I looked at his scarred hand, offered not in dominance but in question, and felt something shift in my chest, something that terrified me more than his power ever could. I took it. They led me through corridors that twisted like a labyrinth, torches casting shadows that danced and writhed against ancient stone. 2 guards flanked me in silence, their expressions carefully neutral, though I caught the younger one glancing at me with something that looked almost like pity. "Don't even think about running," the older guard finally said, though his tone lacked menace. "The king doesn't tolerate disobedience." "Where would I run?" I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Back to a village that traded me like spoiled grain?" The younger guard's mouth twitched, almost a smile, before his companion's glare silenced him. The king's chambers loomed before us, massive doors carved with wolves running beneath a full moon. The imagery sent ice through my veins. Moon and wolf. The old symbols. Before the guards could knock, the doors swung inward, and warmth billowed out, carrying the scent of cedarwood and burning sage. "Leave us." Sievert's command came from somewhere within. The guards retreated without question, their footsteps fading until I stood alone in the doorway, my heart a war drum against my ribs. "Enter, Lucille of Silverpine." Not a command. An invitation that somehow felt more dangerous. I stepped inside, and the doors closed behind me with a finality that stole my breath. The chamber was enormous. Furs covered the floor, a fire roared in a hearth large enough to stand in, and weapons lined the walls like iron promises. But it was the bed that dominated the space, carved from dark wood with posts thick as tree trunks, draped in midnight blue that matched my cloak. Sievert stood by a table laden with food and wine, his armor removed, revealing a simple linen shirt that did nothing to diminish the power coiled in his frame. Without the ceremonial trappings, he looked more dangerous, not less. More real. You're wondering why I chose you. He poured wine into 2 goblets with steady hands. I know why. Bitterness sharpened my words. You wanted to humiliate the nobles who think themselves above a king's whim. What better way than to choose the village madwoman? His laugh caught me off guard, deep and genuine, transforming his face into something almost boyish. Is that what they told you? That you're mad? They didn't have to tell me what I already know. I touched the pendant through my shift, seeking its familiar comfort. I see things that aren't there. Hear voices in empty rooms. By any measure, I'm broken. Or perhaps, he said, moving closer with predatory grace, everyone else is blind and deaf to what has always been there. He stopped just beyond my reach, amber eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I'm going to offer you something, Lucille. Something I suspect no one has ever offered you before. What? A gilded cage instead of an iron one. A choice. He extended one of the goblets toward me. Survive the night under my roof without fleeing, and dawn decides if you're free. Stay until morning, and I'll grant you your freedom and Silverpine permanent protection. No claiming bite. No binding ceremony. You walk away, and I'll ensure your village never fears raids again. I stared at him, waiting for the trap to reveal its teeth. Just, survive the night? His smile held shadows I couldn't read. Just survive. But know this, I won't make it easy. The wine tasted of blackberries and something darker, sliding down my throat like liquid courage I hadn't asked for. Outside, thunder growled across the mountains, and the first drops of rain began to hammer against the windows like desperate fingers seeking entry. You still haven't told me what surviving the night means, I said, setting the goblet down with more force than necessary. What exactly do you expect from me? Sievert moved to the window, watching the storm gather strength. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating his profile in stark silver. I expect honesty. Something far more dangerous than obedience. Before I could respond, pain lanced through my skull, sharp and sudden as a blade between my eyes. The room tilted, and suddenly I wasn't standing in the king's chamber anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere cold and ancient. Stone walls wept with moisture. A throne carved from black rock sat empty, and around it, shadows moved with purpose, whispering words in a language that predated human speech. They were waiting. Hungry. Patient as graves. Lucille. His voice cut through the vision like an anchor, pulling me back. Strong hands gripped my shoulders, steadying me as the chamber solidified around me once more. What did you see? I blinked away the afterimages, my breath coming in ragged gasps. He was close now, close enough that I could see flecks of gold in those amber eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. The throne, I whispered. Your throne. It's infected, rotting from something old and angry. His hands tightened on my shoulders, not painfully, but with urgency. Tell me everything. I don't understand what I see, I said, frustration bleeding through my fear. I never do. Just fragments. Warnings that arrive too late or make no sense until. You're a moon speaker. He said it with such certainty, such reverence, that I fell silent. Your mother was one. Your grandmother before her. The gift runs in your bloodline like silver through stone. My mother called them visions. The village called them madness. They're neither. He released me slowly, as though afraid I might shatter. They're the moon's language, the old magic that existed before alphas learned to dominate and omegas learned to submit. He moved to a chest against the wall, unlocking it with a key that hung around his neck. I've been searching for a moon speaker for 3 years. Ever since the curse began to spread. Curse. The word felt heavy on my tongue. He lifted something from the chest, a scroll so ancient the parchment had yellowed to the color of old bone. My grandfather made a bargain he shouldn't have. Broke an oath to the old gods to secure his power. Now that debt is coming due, and it's poisoning everything, the throne, the land, the very bloodline. His eyes found mine again, and in them I saw something I hadn't expected from an Alpha King: desperation. The prophecy says only a moon speaker bonded to the throne's heir can break it. But the bond must be willing. Chosen. Not forced. Thunder cracked directly overhead, shaking the stones beneath our feet. In its echo, I heard whispers, the same voices from my vision, now pressing against the chamber walls like wolves circling prey. That's why you chose me. Understanding dawned cold and sharp. Not because I'm your fated mate. Because you need me. I need you, he agreed. But that doesn't make the first part untrue. A knock at the door interrupted the charged silence between us. At Sievert's command, a young woman entered, her arms laden with folded linens that gleamed white even in the firelight. She kept her eyes respectfully lowered, though curiosity radiated from her like heat. Your bath is prepared, my king, she said softly. And for the lady as well, should she wish it. Lady. Not Omega. Not tribute. Not offering. The word settled over me like an unfamiliar cloak. Thank you, Mira. Sievert's voice gentled in a way I hadn't heard before. When the door closed behind her, he gestured toward an adjoining chamber I hadn't noticed. You should bathe. Wash away the hole's touch. The attendants weren't kind to you. I touched my shoulder where the woman's nails had bitten through fabric, surprised he'd noticed such a small cruelty amid the chaos of claiming. And what will you do while I'm indisposed? Wait. He moved to the chair by the fire, settling into it with the controlled grace of a predator at rest. I have patience when the prize is worth it. The words should have frightened me. Instead, they sent heat coiling through my belly in a way that had nothing to do with the wine. I moved toward the bathing chamber before he could see the flush creeping up my neck. The room beyond stole my breath. A copper tub large enough for two dominated the space, steam rising from water scattered with white flower petals that released a scent like moonlight made tangible. Oil lamps cast golden light across tile floors, and beside the tub lay a robe of deep midnight blue, silk, not the rough wool I'd worn my entire life. I shed the ceremonial shift with trembling fingers, letting it pool at my feet like a shed skin. The pendant remained, my mother's final gift, cold silver against my breastbone. When I sank into the water, a sound escaped me that was half gasp, half sob. Warmth enveloped me completely, seeping into muscles I hadn't realized were knotted with tension. For long moments, I simply existed in the heat, letting it dissolve the lingering fear and confusion. I washed with soap that smelled of lavender and something citrus, scrubbing away not just dirt but the memory of being handled, assessed, dismissed as defective. The water turned gray with travel dust and the residue of other people's judgment. When I finally emerged, wrapping myself in the silk robe that felt like sin against my skin, I studied my reflection in the polished bronze mirror. My dark hair hung wet and wild down my back. The blue robe made my skin look luminous, almost otherworldly. I looked like someone who belonged in a king's chamber. The realization terrified me more than any threat. I'm finished, I called, my voice smaller than I intended. The door opened immediately, and Sievert filled the frame, his eyes darkening as they traveled over me. Not with the crude assessment of the alphas in the hall, but with something that felt like recognition. Like coming home to a place he'd been searching for all his life. Your turn, I said, moving past him, though the brush of our bodies in the doorway sent electricity racing across my skin. His hand caught my wrist, gentle, questionable. Lucille. My name in his mouth sounded like a prayer. You should know something before this night goes any further. I waited, pulse jumping beneath his touch. I won't use my alpha voice on you. Won't force your submission through dominance. His thumb traced the flutter of my heartbeat. Whatever happens tonight happens because you choose it. Do you understand? I understood that this was more dangerous than any claiming bite. That consent given freely bound tighter than any alpha command ever could. I understand, I whispered, and watched something like relief soften the hard lines of his face. He released my wrist and moved toward the bathing chamber, pausing at the threshold. Wait for me by the fire. You'll find warmer wine on the table. The door closed between us, and I stood frozen for a heartbeat before my legs remembered how to move. I poured wine with unsteady hands, the storm outside matching the tempest. Building beneath my ribs. This was madness. I should be planning escape routes, testing windows, anything but standing here in silk that clung to my damp skin, waiting for an alpha king who claimed he needed me for more than my body. But the voices were quieter now. The shadows that usually pressed at the edges of my vision had retreated, as though even they recognized something sacred unfolding. When Sievert emerged, he wore only loose linen trousers, his chest bare and gleaming with water droplets that caught the firelight. My breath stuttered. His body was a map of violence survived. Scars crossed his ribs, his shoulder, one particularly vicious mark running from collarbone to abdomen like a lightning strike frozen in flesh. "You're staring." Amusement colored his voice, but underneath ran something more vulnerable. "You're covered in death." The words escaped before I could soften them. "How many times have you almost died?" He moved closer, firelight playing across the ridges of muscle and evidence of old wounds. "Enough times to know that living is a choice we make every morning." He stopped just beyond touching distance. "You want to know about this one?" His finger traced the scar from collarbone to ribs. I nodded, throat too tight for speech. "An Omega assassin. 3 years ago. She was supposed to be a peace offering from the Northern Territories." His jaw tightened. She got close enough to smile at me before she struck. The poison on her blade should have stopped my heart, but she'd been given a diluted mixture. Someone wanted me to suffer, not die quickly. Who would do that? Someone who believes alphas and omegas should remain in their places. Master and possession. Natural order. Bitterness sharpened his words. They saw my search for a moon speaker as weakness, as betrayal of alpha dominance. Understanding crystallized. "That's why you won't force my submission. Because you've seen what that world creates. Weapons disguised as gifts." "I'm tired, Lucille." He said it so quietly I almost missed it beneath the storm's rage. Tired of being the monster they expect. Tired of ruling a kingdom built on chains and calling it order. His hand rose, hovering near my face but not quite touching. "A king is just a different kind of prisoner. We wear crowns instead of shackles, but we're bound just the same." The vulnerability in those words cracked something open in my chest. I'd spent so long seeing alphas as the enemy, as the force that crushed everything soft and true, that I'd never considered they might be trapped too. Different cages, maybe, but cages nonetheless. "You could take what you want from me," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my limbs. "You're stronger. Faster. This is your territory, your power. Why make bargains when you could simply command?" "Because I don't want an Omega who breaks beneath me." His hand finally made contact, cupping my jaw with a gentleness that contradicted every hard edge of him. "I want a partner who stands beside me. A moon speaker who sees past the crown to the man wearing it. Someone who chooses me not because alpha dominance demands it, but because something true calls between us." Heat bloomed where his skin met mine, spreading through my body like wildfire. "And if nothing calls? If this is just your need for a cursebreaker and my need for Silverpine's survival?" His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath caught audibly. "Then why does your pulse race when I touch you? Why do your pupils dilate? Why does your scent change, becoming sweeter, warmer?" He leaned closer, his breath ghosting across my mouth. "Why haven't you pulled away?" "Because I couldn't." Because despite every lesson survival had taught me, despite knowing that trusting alphas led only to chains, my body recognized something my mind refused to accept. "Damn you," I whispered, and closed the distance between us. The kiss shattered something between us, some final wall of pretense. His mouth claimed mine with a hunger that should have terrified me, but instead felt like recognition. Like two pieces of a broken whole finally aligned. When we broke apart, both gasping, his forehead rested against mine, our breath mingling in the space between. "Tell me about Silverpine," he said, his voice rough as stone grinding. "Tell me about the forest that made you who you are." The request surprised me more than any demand for submission could have. I pulled back slightly, studying his face for mockery, but found only genuine curiosity burning in those amber depths. "Why do you care about a struggling village and its dying woods?" "Because you care." He guided me toward the firs before the fire, settling beside me close enough that our shoulders touched. "And because I need to understand what calls to a moon speaker's heart." So I told him. About the ancient pines that sang in winds only I could hear. About the stream where my mother taught me to read the patterns in flowing water, how they revealed truths the eye couldn't see. About the spirits that walked between the trees, not ghosts of the dead, but something older, the forest's own consciousness given form. They speak to me, I admitted, the confession easier in the fire's glow. Tell me where the healing herbs grow, which paths are safe, when danger approaches. The villagers think I'm mad, but the spirits have kept me alive more times than I can count. You're not mad. His hand found mine, threading our fingers together with surprising gentleness. You're what the world was before we broke it. Before alphas conquered and omegas surrendered, before we forgot that power and sight were meant to balance each other. You sound like my mother. I turned to look at him fully. She said the same thing in her fever dreams. That once, long ago, moon speakers and warrior alphas ruled together. That we were the left and right hands of the same body. My grandmother told me similar stories. Shadows moved across his face. She was the last one to remember the old ways before the council silenced her. Called her ideas dangerous. Treasonous. His grip on my hand tightened. They found her dead in her chambers 3 days later. An unfortunate accident. The pain in his voice mirrored my own. My mother died defending me when the village tried to drive us out. They said I'd cursed the harvest, that my visions brought bad luck. I touched the pendant at my throat. She stood between me and their stones until her body gave out. I was 12. We're both orphans then. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt more intimate than our earlier passion. Both carrying dead we couldn't save. Both responsible for people who fear what we are. Is that why you chose me? The question escaped rawly. Because you recognized your own loneliness? I chose you because when I walked into that hall, for the first time in 3 years, the voices stopped screaming. His eyes held mine with frightening intensity. The curse that eats at my throne, at my mind, it went silent the moment I scented you. As if the old gods themselves had exhaled in relief. Outside, the storm reached its crescendo, thunder and lightning dancing together in primal fury. Inside, something equally powerful built between us, not just desire, but understanding. 2 people broken by the same world, carrying the same impossible weight, finding in each other not salvation, but partnership. I'm afraid, I confessed into the space between us. Afraid that if I let you in, I'll lose what makes me myself. Then we'll be afraid together. His free hand cupped my face. And we'll prove fear wrong. I woke to gray light filtering through the windows, soft and uncertain as a question. Sometime during the night, we'd moved to the bed, though I had no memory of the transition. Only fragments remained, his hands mapping my skin with reverent slowness, my own exploration of his scars, whispered confessions that felt more intimate than any physical joining. We'd fallen asleep tangled together, his arm heavy across my waist, my head tucked beneath his chin. Now he was gone. I sat up, the silk robe twisted around me, and found him standing at the window. He dressed in simple clothes, no armor, no crown, just leather breeches and a loose shirt that made him look younger. More vulnerable. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and glittering. You survived the night. His voice carried no inflection, but I heard the tension beneath. I did. My throat felt raw, whether from sleep or emotion I couldn't tell. He turned slowly, and in the dawn light I saw the shadows beneath his eyes, evidence of sleeplessness. Then our bargain is complete. He moved to the door, pulling it open with deliberate care. Beyond, the corridor stretched empty. The guards are waiting at the gatehouse. They'll escort you back to Silverpine. Your village's protection is guaranteed. I'll send the decree with you, sealed with the royal mark. Freedom. Everything I'd wanted. The path home stretched before me like an answered prayer. So why did my chest feel like it was caving in? Just like that. The words emerged sharper than intended. No claiming bite. No demands. I gave you my word. His hand gripped the door frame, knuckles white. I won't break it, no matter what it costs me. I stood, the robe falling into place around me, and moved closer. Close enough to see the muscle jumping in his jaw, the careful control he maintained over every breath. What does it cost you? Everything. The word came out broken. The curse will continue. The throne will rot. Eventually, it will kill me, just as it killed my father and his father before him. But at least you'll be free. At least I'll have given you that. Understanding crashed over me. He was letting me go knowing it meant his death. Honoring our bargain even though it doomed him. This powerful Alpha King, who could have taken what he needed, chosen instead to give me the one thing no one ever had, true choice. You're an idiot. My voice cracked on the words. Surprise flickered across his face. What? You're standing there, martyring yourself beautifully, assuming you know what I want. I closed the distance between us, my hand pressing against his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath my palm. You never asked what I saw in the visions last night. His breath caught. What did you see? You and I in the seer's chamber, touching something ancient and powerful together. Our hands joined, our futures bound. I looked up into those amber eyes that had haunted my dreams. I saw a throne cleansed of shadows. A forest that sang again. A kingdom where moon speakers walked openly, where omegas stood as equals, where balance was restored. Lucille. I saw home, I interrupted, my voice fierce. And it wasn't Silverpine. It wasn't the forest or the cottage or any place I've ever been. My free hand found his face, tracing the scar that marked him as survivor. It was wherever you are. Hope blazed in his expression, quickly dampened by caution. Don't choose me out of obligation. Don't stay because you think you're saving me. I'm not. The truth of it settled in my bones. I'm choosing you because last night, for the first time in my life, I wasn't alone in my own skin. Because you looked at my brokenness and called it sacred. Because I'd rather face whatever comes beside you than live free but empty. His control finally shattered. He pulled me against him, his mouth finding mine with desperate relief, and I tasted salt, his tears or mine, impossible to tell. When we broke apart, both trembling, he pressed his forehead to mine. Are you certain? Show me the seer's chamber, I answered. Let's break your curse together. He led me through a hidden door behind a tapestry, revealing a narrow spiral staircase carved into the castle's bones. The stone felt older here, thrumming with power that made my pendant pulse against my skin in rhythmic response. Each step upward seemed to strip away another layer of the world I'd known, bringing me closer to something fundamental and true. The castle was built around this chamber, Sievert explained, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space. Long before my bloodline claimed the throne. Some say it existed before humans learned to stack stones, that it grew from the earth itself when the world was young. We climbed in silence after that, the air growing colder and somehow thicker, weighted with anticipation. Finally, the stairs opened into a circular room at the tower's peak. Unlike the opulent chambers below, this space was austere, bare stone walls, a single window open to the dawn sky, and in the center, a pedestal of black rock that seemed to drink the light around it. On the pedestal rested a crystal the size of a child's head, cloudy within as though filled with captured storm. But as we entered, the mist inside began to swirl, responding to our presence. The heart of sight, I whispered, drawn forward by a pull I couldn't name. It's alive. It's been dormant for generations. Waiting. Sievert moved to stand opposite me, the pedestal between us. The legend says only a moon speaker bonded to royal blood can wake it. That together, they'll see the truth of their joining, whether they're meant to rule as one or if the bond is false. I studied the crystal, watching patterns form and dissolve in its depths. Blues and silvers, hints of gold that reminded me of his eyes. And if it shows we're not meant for each other? Then I'll honor that truth. His hand hovered over the crystal's surface. But Lucille, I need you to understand, if we are fated, if the heart confirms it, there's no walking away. The bond becomes permanent. Unbreakable. Like a claiming bite? Deeper than that. His gaze held mine across the space between us. A claiming bite marks the body. This marks the soul. The weight of his words should have sent me fleeing down those ancient stairs. Instead, I felt only certainty settling like snow on frozen ground. I'd survived last night not through endurance, but through finding something I hadn't known I'd been searching for, a mirror for my own fractured spirit, someone who understood that power and sight were two sides of one coin. Then let's see what truth the old gods have for us. I placed my palm flat against the crystal's cool surface. Sievert's hand joined mine on the opposite side, and the world exploded into light. It wasn't painful, more like being unmade and remade in the same instant. Visions cascaded through my mind faster than thought, Sievert and I standing before the throne, shadows fleeing our joined presence like smoke before wind. My body heavy with child, his hands protective around the swell of new life. The two of us aged and silver-haired, surrounded by children who bore both warrior strength and spirit sight. Silverpine Forest singing again, its spirits dancing in moonlight as moon speakers walked freely between the trees. And beneath it all, a sense of rightness so profound it brought tears streaming down my face. Not submission. Not dominance. Balance. Two halves of an ancient whole, finally reunited. The light grew brighter, spilling from the chamber, flooding down the stairs, racing through the castle like sunrise breaking across winter darkness. I heard distant shouts of alarm and wonder as the entire fortress blazed with power that hadn't stirred in 3 generations. When the light finally faded and I could see again, Sievert stood before me, our hands still pressed to the crystal, which now glowed with steady internal luminescence. His face was wet with tears that matched my own. "Did you see?" His voice broke on the question. "I saw everything." I moved around the pedestal, never breaking contact with the crystal, until I stood beside him. "I saw us. Equals," he said, something like awe coloring the word. "Partners." I corrected, and felt the bond settle into place, not a chain, but a foundation. Something to build upon, rather than something that constrained. We descended the stairs hand in hand, the crystal's glow still pulsing in harmony with our joined heartbeats. The bond hummed between us now, not intrusive, not demanding but present. A golden thread connecting two souls that had been searching across lifetimes to find each other. The castle had changed. Or perhaps I simply saw it differently now, through eyes opened by the heart's revelation. The shadows that had clung to corners and doorways had retreated, and servants we passed stared openly, their expressions shifting from shock to something that looked almost like hope. "The entire fortress felt it," Sievert said quietly as we reached the lower corridors. "They'll have questions. Demands. The court will convene within the hour, and they won't accept this easily. Let them come." My voice carried a strength I'd never possessed before, or perhaps had always possessed but never claimed. "I'm done hiding what I am. Done apologizing for gifts that others call curses." We entered his chambers to find Mira waiting, her eyes wide with wonder. "My king, the throne room," she faltered, gaze darting between us. "The corruption is gone. The black stone runs clear again, and the whispers have ceased." "What did you do?" "We broke a curse that should have died generations ago." Sievert's hand tightened around mine. "Mira, summon the court. Tell them their king will address them within the hour. And send word to Silverpine, their daughter will be coming home, but not as tribute returned. As their future queen." After Mira departed, practically running in her eagerness to spread the news, I moved to the window. Dawn had fully broken, painting the world in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere beyond these walls, Silverpine stirred to morning, the forest I'd always called home, the people who'd feared me, the spirits who'd been my only companions. "I need to return," I said, feeling Sievert's questioning gaze on my back. "Not permanently, but to gather my things. To explain. And to make them understand that this changes everything, not just for me, but for every moon speaker still hiding their gifts, every Omega taught to believe submission is their only value." He came to stand beside me, our reflections merging in the glass. "You'll need an escort. The roads aren't safe for a moon speaker who can hear danger approaching before it arrives? For the fated mate of an Alpha King." I turned to face him, lifting my chin. "I survived your night, Sievert. I think I can manage a forest path I've walked since childhood." His smile transformed his face, pride and affection warring in his expression. "There she is. The woman who looked me in the eye when all others cowered. The sovereign I need beside me." "Not behind you," I clarified, needing him to understand. "Not beneath you. Beside you. Always beside me." He pulled me close, his lips finding mine in a kiss that sealed promises more binding than any ceremony. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Together, we'll show them what balance looks like. What the kingdom can become when warrior and seer rule as one." "It won't be easy," I warned, thinking of the high-born alphas in the claiming hall, their expressions of outrage and disgust. "There will be resistance. Assassination attempts. Challenges to my authority and yours for choosing me. Let them challenge. His voice carried the steel of a king who'd survived too many attempts on his life to fear more. We have something they don't, the old power, awakened and whole. The heart of sight chose us, Lucille. The gods themselves have spoken. A knock at the door announced the arrival of formal clothes, for both of us. Not the ceremonial omega silks or the tribute simple shift, but a gown of midnight blue embroidered with silver moons and wolves running together beneath their light. A queen's dress for a moon speaker who would bow to no one. As I dressed with Sievert's help, his fingers gentle on laces and clasps, I thought of my mother's final words: "Your visions are not madness. They are the moon's own voice, and no alpha can silence what the moon has spoken." She'd been right. The moon had spoken, and I had finally learned to listen. "Ready?" Sievert asked, offering his arm. I took it, feeling the bond pulse with approval, and together we walked toward the throne room where a new era waited to be born. No longer tribute and king. No longer Omega and Alpha in the old broken way. Moon speaker and warrior. Seer and sovereign. Two halves of one whole, chosen by forces older than human ambition or fear. The doors opened before us, and I stepped forward not as the defective girl from Silverpine, but as Lucille, partner to a king, voice of the ancient powers, and architect of the balance that would remake the world. I had survived the night under his roof, and dawn had decided I was free. Free to choose my own destiny. Free to claim my power. Free to love without losing myself. And in that freedom, I had found something more precious than safety or independence. I had found home in the last place I'd ever expected to look. In the eyes of an alpha king who'd learned that true strength lies not in dominance, but in standing beside someone who makes you whole.